What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some of the data points, break it down what moved it, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So SoFi did go down 2.5%, 25.64 the low, 27.33 the high, and you did have a lot of volume. So 80.3 million shares being traded, 66.1 is the average. There was a lot of abnormal transactions just done in the after hours that is making up for a good chunk of the volume. So I'll start off by going over that. So these are some of the transactions occurring on the dark pool. So just happened roughly about 10-15 minutes ago, 64.4 million, 65.4 million. So 2.5 million shares, 2.5 or just over that at a price of 25.76. And then you did have 2.5, 8.04, and then 12 million. So crazy stuff. Even aside from that, these are some of the transactions occurring on the secondary market. So quite a lot, 4.15, and that seems to be repeated, was it 5-6 times, 2.7, 1.5. Even throughout the day, you did see a lot of big transactions overall. So right here, 10.6 million, 62.3. So massive amount of volatility today. So I think generally going into today, we all knew that the shutdown kind of was kicking in, right? Because they didn't come to that deal as of midnight last night. But interestingly enough, you did have during the pre-market, things started to move higher, and which was rather odd. And it turns out, I guess it was more of a just broader bull trap, but we did have some data that came out first thing right here that kind of is a positive / negative. So ADP employment came in at negative 32,000, forecast of 40,000. So horrific data, but that did really solidify a 25 basis point cut, and now assuming a 50 basis point cut is potentially on the table. Only 1%, but still better than nothing. And for those of you that have been watching a lot of my YouTube channels, you know that's exactly how I saw things playing out, and probably even more so for the rest of the week. One thing on a side note, actually before I get into that, we did also have manufacturing data that came in at 49.1, forecast of 49. So that came in relatively good. But as far as I was aware going into today, if there was going to be that shutdown, they were going to pause all data. I don't know, maybe this was just too late to cancel or something, but I came into today assuming that we'd have nothing. So rather surprising that we had ADP and then manufacturing data, but as far as tomorrow, we do have challenger job cuts and then initial jobless claims. So again, should be a very interesting thing, and whether those actually come out or not, I'm not really sure. SoFi actually did put out news though, and that was the date of their Q3 earnings, and so they slated it for October 28th, bright and early. Just one time, I really wish that they move it to after hours. But nonetheless, should be a pretty good one. So the timing of this earnings kind of matches with what it normally is. So no speculative moving up or pushing it back. So kind of in line with that. So again, this should be a pretty good catalyst. And as I've done videos in the past, historically, since the date of them announcing their earnings to the actual date, till their actual earnings, it does go up. I think it was like 2.9% on average. So again, from now up until October the 28th, you can anticipate for SoFi to go up 9%. So definitely good stuff. Of course, history doesn't always repeat itself and all the other fun jazz, but this should be a good earnings all in all. Aside from that, a couple of things I do want to share with you. So data-driven investing did post this right here. So it looks as though that level 1 options are live only on some accounts. So pretty good stuff. Does match with exactly what Anthony did mention was coming for Q3. They left it right down to the wire. Can't say that they missed on their forecast of doing that, but again, Anthony did that long tweet, I think it was like 2 months ago, where he went over expectations of when SoFi is going to release level 1. Generally crypto, he just put down Q4, but level 1, they did say Q3, so technically last day in Q3. So definitely good to see for that. The only other thing that really helped SoFi kind of move higher was this. So the analyst that gave that neutral rating, I think it was BTIG on Upstart, and because they kind of hinted at abnormally high delinquencies, a lot of people correlated that with SoFi, that caused SoFi to go down. Unfortunately, looks like that analyst did change some of their numbers, so that caused Upstart to really go higher today. So Upstart had that very nice push higher, and SoFi for the most part did piggyback off of that. But again, regrettably, the broader market did kind of take hold and really brought both stocks down, both SoFi and also Upstart. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. Aside from all of that fun stuff though, shorts did increase about 32,000 shares today. 9.39% of the free float is being shorted. Works out to be 110.48 million shares overall being shorted. Cost to borrow minimum still being negative. So now this is, I believe, the second consecutive day of that being negative. So more signs of manipulation a little bit. Based on the options, 64 million in calls, 23 million in puts, and then 39% of all the options being done were bearish in nature. Coming from a bull standpoint, you see a consensus for it to be above roughly $27. So still a lot of optimism. It would be interesting to see of this, what was done at the beginning part of the day when SoFi was actually doing relatively good versus near the tail end. It does look like a lot of the bearish options were more near the end of the day. And then speaking of bears, it looks like they are anticipating for it to be sub roughly about 25 to 25.50. So for the most part where we are now, so there's a lot more upside still. But for those of you that have kind of tuned into my Patreon where I go over a lot of the options for the last 2 days, very big money and big institutions have been betting that the broader market is going to pull a little bit lower. So again, something to keep in mind. Aside from these big transactions that did occur, which is very interesting, possibly could be correlated with some level of rebalancing, or it might be just some institutions wanting to get in, buying the SoFi dip, or for whatever reason. Keep in mind, we are now officially in Q4, so any day now, SoFi could unveil crypto. And in my opinion, I do feel that it would be launched and announced before their Q3 earnings. That way they can actually have that as a good talking point. So again, that's just my viewpoint, of course. Aside from all of that though, with it closing at 25.76, it is trading between this S2 and this S3. So 25.21 is going to be that strong support. Wasn't really tested whatsoever today. And then 26.44 followed by 27.21 is going to be the next strong target / resistance points. Kind of bounced off of this general S1. So we do know that's a heavy resistance point. No new analyst ratings or anything like that. So the last one that did come out was good old Morgan Stanley, a sell, $18 price target. So that was always a fun one to see. Aside from all of that though, on the actual chart, SoFi is now fully confirmed to be below that 10-day moving average. So it is in consolidation mode. Next level to watch for is going to be that 50-day moving average at 24.77. And if it does break below that, then you could see kind of shit hit the fan a little bit, pardon my French. But then again, it wouldn't just be SoFi, it'd be a lot of stocks in the broader market. But aside from that, comparing today versus yesterday, you see a little bit more willing sellers. There's somewhat of a gap at that like 26.80. So you could potentially see a, let's say if the shutdown does somehow get rectified and they come to some sort of agreement or whatever else, then you could see a little bit of a quick recovery to there. But you do see less and less willing buyers. So again, you could see some further consolidation based on that. Algos were completely taking over the broader market today. So every stock that I generally looked at was getting suppressed, not necessarily by institutions, but rather by algos. Today, there wasn't really that much in real news aside from just SoFi announcing their earnings date. So no new analysts, no new ratings or anything like that. So yeah, I think it was just piggybacking off of the broader market and all the other fun jazz. One thing though, because of all this consolidation, you do see the stochastic RSI has fully reset. So a good piece of news, such as, like I said, the shutdown being fixed and rectified, or crypto or something else, then you could see a very nice push higher as a byproduct of that. Or potentially even just SoFi announcing that they have options, because keep in mind, a lot of people aren't necessarily on Twitter. Some people legitimately just look at news and they use this to base on like what they're going to be buying and selling. So I think if I was SoFi, I would just put out news saying, hey, we are testing out level 1 options, and if everything goes according to plan, we're going to have a full launch and an update as of whatever date. So I think they should be putting out some news about that, but again, what do I know in life? So let me know your general thoughts on SoFi. Did you think that today was more of a bull trap, or do you think it was just a controlled push lower? A lot of these transactions that did occur after hours, both in the secondary market and dark pool. Do you think that these are institutions selling, loading up the boat? These two big $60+ million transactions, of course, it's very difficult to always tell what is buys and what is sells on the dark pool. So there was a couple of transactions afterwards, but you can kind of see some of the transactions before and after. So it went from 25.77 to 25.76, although there was like a gap of like almost 10 minutes before that, 3 minutes afterwards. So it's not really a good indication of potentially whether those are buys or sells. At the 17 mark, looks like the stock price kind of stayed where it was. So in reality, I think it's near impossible to determine whether these were buys or sells. So what's your general thoughts on that? One final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point and bangers. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.